Hey guys, it's Barrett with the Gimpy Camper. So one of the things that's always been irritating to me with our camper is the fact that we have to empty two different drain hoses for our sewer tanks, or gray tanks at least. You know, the front sewer pipe empties our main gray tank, which is our bathroom shower and our bathroom sink, as well as our black tank empties through that pipe. And then we have a sewer outlet that's behind the axles that only holds the galley tank, which is for the kitchen sink in our rear kitchen. This causes some issue, you know, for you guys that have full hookup sites. You know, that requires using a Y and at least 3 sewer hoses. That's not an issue for me because I don't usually go to places that have a lot of full hookup facilities. But it is a pain in the drain to dump at the dump station, or for that matter, even if we're at a full hookup site, I just drain the tanks at the end of our stay just like we're at a dump station. You know, the one thing that I do differently is that I do like to rinse the black tank out for, 30 minutes or so when we're at a full hookup site, because we're not there that often. And most of the time I don't rinse the black tank with the black tank rinse anyway. And I'm not really able to right now because my vacuum breaker is broken, and so it just drips through the floor, which we are in the process of remedying that, because there's always something to do on the camper. Now, one additional problem that you can have with this setup, if you want to dump the rear galley tank when you're already set up and like using the camper, but say we were at one campsite where they had a honey wagon come around instead of having a dump station, and if your slides out, you got to crawl up under there to hook the hose up and then to pull the gate valve open, and that's just a pain in the patootie. I did see a video that was made by All About RVs where they did this modification, and I thought, I think I'll give it a go. So, what they did is they connected both of those sewer outlets together into one. And here's some things you need to keep in mind before you jump into all this. Number one, you're going to have to cut some holes into your underbelly. This just really isn't a big deal. And the best patching method that we found, I'm going to link a video here, but that's to use chloroplast and a little bit of wood to back the patch up, and then go around it all with silicone. That's worked great for me. And the tapes and stuff, the tape, every time I've used it, it's came off in less than 500 miles. And I've driven about 10,000 miles with some of these patches that I'm talking about with the chloroplast, and didn't come loose or anything, just fine. The next thing that you got to look at is the size of your pipe. My camper had a full 3-inch valve at the back tank, whereas a lot of other campers use a smaller drain for the secondary tank. I could have changed it to the smaller one, but truthfully I thought in an emergency I could open that tank drain and leave the external Valterra valve closed and use that for a few extra gallons of gray water storage from our kitchen, whenever it's not freezing, of course. That's why I want to leave the gate valve where it is, and so that way the tank heater helps keep everything from freezing and it won't freeze in the pipe itself. Now, my pipe is about 12 foot long that I've added, and it's 3 inches in diameter. So a volume calculator online actually says that this is actually equivalent to about 4.4 gallons of extra capacity. I did want to leave, like I say, the factory gate valve in place to prevent any freezing problems. I think that this is going to be great. I did have a couple of issues that we'll get into in a minute though. The other thing to keep in mind is that you should have around 1/4 inch of drop for every foot in the pipe. In order to see how this is going to work for you, you're gonna have to open the underbelly and see, because there's some instructions in the path, and I would prefer to go as far as possible inside the underbelly, but unfortunately we had an obstruction, so we pretty much had to go down straight out of the gate valve. Now, this also messed up the drop and the slope that I wanted, as I wanted the pipe to be as high as it could over the axles, so it pretty much runs just parallel to the bottom of the camper over the axles and then down. However, this is a 3-inch pipe. It's a kitchen galley tank. There's no solids to be mixed in here other than some small food particles. Not like any poo's gonna get stuck and just not flush out and cause like a pyramid type thing blockage that you're going to have an issue with. Now the steps that we took during this install are as follows. I started the tank. I took off the pipe that went to the factory rear sewer outlet, which was mainly a 90-degree elbow in the sewer cap. The way that we took this off was by taking off the 4 screws in the corners of the gate valve, and then you can get another adapter that just attaches straight to that sewer valve and just glue the pipe straight onto that. So you don't really have to mess around with the sewer valve all that much. You know, I'll put one of those adapters in the description down below if you're interested. But be careful putting that gate valve back together because those seals are easy to get dislodged. It was a lot easier putting those seals on than the ones on our main tank, so we had an issue with and had to have Shelburne RB help us out with all the tightness there. That was just a bah. Alright, then after you get an adapter, you can use a section of pipe to see how far the thing can go inside the underbelly. You know, I found that I couldn't go very far at all, like I said, because I tried to put a piece up in there and it just hit something that just obstructed the way there within a couple of feet. Now you know you're going to want an assortment of fittings, 90 degree, 45 degree, 22.5 degree fittings, all in an appropriate size pipe, because you're going to have to try some different ones to get that appropriate slope and to get the drop the way you want it, especially where it comes out of the underbelly. I also found that a piece of 2x4 was just the right length. I found one just the right length to hold that section of pipe up against the bottom of the camper. And that way it kind of freed up a hand, gave me an extra hand. And now I didn't glue anything up yet because I was only just doing a dry fitting to see how everything would work together. And it is okay to mix PVC and ABS if necessary, but be sure the glue's rated for both. I really didn't want to mix in PVC. However, there's not one place in my hometown that still sells ABS. So then after I run the pipe as far as I could and got the slopes and everything, I did find a sweeping Y at the local Lowe's that had the 3-inch fitting on the side, and it just kind of, I was able to get the pipe where it just flowed in quite well from there. So after I dry fitted everything, I used a Sharpie to mark, you know, lines on the sides so I could get those angles the same exact way as when I took them apart. You know, be careful on that so you got the right ends. If you take them all apart, you're just going to have lines that line up and don't mean anything. I did have an issue there too. Then I cleaned everything and I glued it all together. After I glued the pipe together, I used some black spray paint before I put it into the camper, paint the PVC so that it wouldn't stand out as much and it looks more like the factory ABS. I put 2 coats of that black paint on the PVC, and then I took that large pipe, which I did leave into like 2 different sections so it'd make it a little bit easier. So then the first section obviously started out with that sewer valve, and so I fastened that back together, and I only had 3 or 4 feet there, so it was a little easier to work with. And so I got all that fastened together, and then I started gluing the bigger sections of pipe together because I left them separated by 2 or 3 pieces, that way that it would be easier just to put them together and you wouldn't have to worry as much about if I got the exact angles right on those corners and stuff. The one end with the gate valve went together fine, but the other end with the where it goes to the main sewer line and it had the sweeping Y, I didn't really get that. I didn't feel like I was able to push everything together as good as I liked for that glue to set up. Now, you know, it's kind of ironic because the area that I was worried about, it didn't leak. But the other end up at the gate valve, leaving the gray tank, it didn't leak at the valve there, which I said you gotta be careful of the seal, but it leaked on the first elbow coming down under the camper. Now, truthfully, I am gonna have to get back in there. I've actually worked it out with Valterra. They sent me another easy valve like they sent me for my other 2 tanks. And I'm gonna show you guys how to put that in. I wanna show you how I can empty it now after I get that in from my main water station without having to crawl underneath the camper. But that wasn't in yet, and I had a trip coming, so I had to get everything fixed so I could go. So I just went ahead and put it back together with the regular manual valve that it was on there originally to start with. So because of that, I hadn't tore it apart and re-glued that elbow because it only leaks, and it's just a little drop whenever I'm emptying the tank, and I do have to get back in there anyway. So then I went back and added some galvanized metal strapping for some support under the sewer pipe, which I attached to the steel cross members of the camper with some self-tapping screws. After that, I patched the underbelly up around the pipe as good as I could, and then I used some spray foam. And then I went back with some black spray paint, the same spray paint I used for the pipe, and I just painted over that spray foam, and it looks all factory. It looks really good actually when it's done. And then I also went through at the very end and I painted those galvanized straps black. And so I think it looks good. I think it looks like a professional job, even though it's leaking a little bit. Just don't tell nobody. It's just gray water. It's just a few drops anyway. Alright, so what problems did I run into during this process? You know, the biggest problem with the install was the single small leak that I'm talking about. And that was at the tank end of the pipe. But like I say, I'm not worried about that because I got to get back in there anyway. And I can glue that back together or replace what I need to. No big deal at all. So when we get this finished up with that last valve, we'll give you an update, show you how everything's working, walk you through it. And, you know, thanks for being a part of our family here. Thanks for watching this video to the end. This upgrade has made such a difference whenever we're stopping to empty our tanks. And I don't have to do the whole, let's pull up another couple of feet and stop again. Because then the people behind you at the dump station, they're like, all right, we can go. And they're like, oh, he stopped again.
Do not forget to hit that subscribe button.